sure that math works? And I'm like,
I know what in the past life.
that's an entire life.
So,
It's figuring out the
I mean, but that's what we do.
Zero. I wasn't sure if that was
They don't.
three.
I mean,
Well, that sounds good.
Zero. Okay. Yeah.
they've cast enough doubt with each other on department heads' ability and their jobs that they don't trust anything. So, like, how do you prove it? I don't know. It's just math. It's an Excel form.
what?
I don't think I responded to any roast beef reports today.
Oh, okay. That's what I was thinking.
No kitchen up,
That's not good and a bad thing, depending on where you're going.
I think I saw Brianna walking up. Public hearing without the public.
I gotta get on that. You do it,
Maybe I didn't
Sarah.
see her. I thought I saw her.
Good. Mm.
All right, everyone else ready? Everyone ready?
Yes.
All right. I'd like to call this April Fool's edition of the school committee business meeting to order. Please, we're going to start off with a public hearing around the budget. Mrs. Yell, can you take the roll, please?
Mayor Reardon,
I'm here.
Sarah Hall,
Here.
Andrew Boulder,
Present.
Brian Callahan,
Here.
Brianna Higgins, Kathleen Shaw,
Here.
and Juliet Walker.
Present.
All right, can we rise for the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let the record show Member Higgins is here. And I will now turn the meeting over to Vice Chair Hall.
Okay. Just so everyone is clear, we do have 2 periods of public comment this evening. The first one will be following the superintendent's budget presentation and specific to the budget. That's part of our public budget hearing. And once we're done with that, we will adjourn and then immediately call to order for our regular business meeting, where we will have our regular public comment period on any other topics. So,
All right.
you're up.
All right, thank you all very much. In addition to the booklet that you received, we added more documents for your budget book. And exactly what you're getting tonight, we'll be presenting for the public hearing. So let's get started. So moving forward, tonight's in the contents that you have that we're going to cover is our priorities. Very similar work that we've been presenting since November. Budget assumptions. Also in there is our level service budget. The demographic trends for Newburyport. Background information. We added Chapter 70 and also school choice. Just some summary background on how that gets calculated. And then also our FY25 budget overview. So if you all recall, we did the level service budget in February 27th. Then we had our aspirational budget on March 4th. Then we made some revisions at the March 18th meeting. And now with further revisions, our April 1st public hearing on the budget. 7 on page 19 is the previous presentations. So for our audience that is watching tonight, you can see the previous budget presentations that we have linked there. And then page 8 is just the budget details. So as we start every year, budget priorities and our budget assumptions. So obviously we tie to our vision, our strategic plan, supporting teaching and learning, Our most valuable asset is the personnel, the staff that is in front of our students, and then operations. And just when we start, especially with the level service, contractual obligations, we have 3 unions. We're over 450 employees. We take that in great consideration as we begin the budget. And then also our federal and state mandates, ones that are funded and then ones that are not funded. And then also what falls underneath there is our transportation. And we've covered a lot of this in the previous budgets. So just scrolling through, we talked about level service. Our budget mainly is 74% personnel and then 26% non-personnel. Our first presentation on the 27th, taking our existing programs, existing staff, everything that we have in operations today, and then moving that all to next year. So that's our level service budget. And once we've done that, we presented the 6.65 city appropriation, and then the overall budget increase to a 4.12. So you have the city appropriation, which we all know is the main source of the funding, typically between 85 and 87%. But then on the left side, as we talked about multiple times, those are other revenue sources that we utilize to bring down, to find, I guess, a happy balance between the city appropriation and then the school budget. So as we, the level service budget and use of funds, so this next page, which we've talked about in the past, so this is kind of just another way of looking at it, broken down by cost center. And then as you break it up, the district is 31%, Bresnahan was 20%, Mullen 9%, Knock 15%, and then the high school an estimated 25% of the overall level service budget. On the next page, we got into a lot of details and different areas of the budgeting. From our city allocation, Medicaid, preschool, tuition, other tuition sources, our revolving accounts, professional development grants, entitlement grants, and circuit breaker. And then what we really developing our budget this year, and as we've been stating, it's a lot less personnel heavy and more non-personnel. And that's because of, I think, 2 things. One, I think strategically over the years, I think we've developed staffing patterns that supports all of our students. So we have a great foundation of staff. So that's why on this year's budget, you're not seeing a lot of add to staff. But what we're seeing is those non-personnel costs have increased. And obviously that's happening around the country at this time. So the other piece that we highlighted in a lot of our budget discussions was the demographic trends for us. So when we look at our total enrollment, we've talked about this multiple times. So our enrollment hasn't really fluctuated much within 100 students since 2018. But the services for our students, going back to those state and federal mandates, the services for our students, those areas of personnel is where you see over the past few years the increases, making sure we're providing social emotional support for students that have mental health concerns, also special education, making sure that our students are getting support, and then also our L families, making sure that they're getting the correct support. So when we look at our demographic trends, so school choice, this chart right here just represents students coming in and the students who have been leaving. And we know the breakdown of that is a majority of half of them was about elementary school. They like to, some parents like that traditional elementary. And then at the high school, students choicing out. And we're seeing that increase with the online learning high schools. That's happening. So for our demographics, when we're looking at English language learners, the newcomers coming in, You can see that trend in Newburyport has been going up. Our low income and economically disadvantaged students and families also is going up, and that's why we're saying we support all students. And these are some of the changes over the past few years. And then the last piece is students with disabilities, once again supporting those families and those students. And then we've talked about this. This is our high needs, where you compile all of your most highly needed students for support and services. The next page, we have budget background information. So I just kind of highlight Chapter 70. And if you recall, a few years back, one of the aspects was the free kindergarten. In the beginning, we utilized some grants to fund full-day kindergarten, with the understanding that those kindergarten numbers would be part of our enrollment. And then once we did that, our Chapter 70, part of the Chapter 70 increase to $1 million, I think it was last year, was because of those enrollment numbers in our Newburyport Public Schools. This year, we got the minimum per pupil increase. So got the same Chapter 70 from last year to this year, and the minimal is $30 per student, which is an increase of $65,000 of Chapter 70 that has come in. And then I just broke down the aid and try to really summarize how the Chapter 70 works for anyone that's watching, and also our school committee. The other topic is school choice. So here's another chart that really just highlights school choice. And we've had some questions on school choice. Tuition, as we said, is $5,000 per student. But remember, the aid that comes in per student will be adjusted for different needs of the student. So that kind of just breaks that formula down and how that looks. And then this last data chart here for you all is just school choice sending and receiving data over the past few years. So that's also some good information there for everybody. All right. So with that background, on March 4th, this is where we had our aspirational budget. So this was the level service plus all of the asks of our principals and budget holders that are in the audience, and just want to credit them for all their hard work in developing the budget this year with all of us. So as you recall, the bus monitors at the Bresnahan, the NOC music teacher, student leadership, NHS had pathways coordinator, humanities teacher, Peterson program, and then the district special education contracted services tuition increases. I think as we go through tonight's budget, once we get to the budget that we have presenting for tonight, I think one important aspect is the phone system, and that's in our capital improvement plan. So as part of our overall security updates with the cameras and all the work we've been doing there, the phone system at the high school to be 911 compliant is an estimated cost of $100,000, and that would be put into the capital improvement plan, and hopefully as we move forward this summer, we'll be able to upgrade. We're going to need to be upgrading those 911 phone systems. So coming in on the 4th, so the level service budget, which we just presented just went over quickly, but on the 27th came in at 6.65% city appropriation, with the aspirational budget on March 4th, it was 7.05. The level service budget over here was 4.12% city appropriation, and then the overall budget was 4.57. And remember, that's the aspirational. That's having everything in the budget. So working with the principals and budget holders and central office, we made some revisions for the 18th. That was in my superintendent's report. So the bus monitors, working with Andy Wolf and Jamie Sokolowski, working to develop an NHS program, utilizing our student leaders and tying that into an internship program. Looks very promising. Our music teacher, $12,000. That will increase the .8 music teacher to full-time. So now we'll have the ability to share staff throughout to enhance our music programs, which is great. Working with the NOC and the Mullen, we have a special education cohort and due to enrollments that we anticipate an $85,000 savings. Our pathways coordinator and humanities teacher, at that point we took off on the 18th, and we moved our Peterson program, the $50,000 to be funded through other tuition. We also have some savings looking at enrollment of special education program and a cohort of students of a savings of $150,000. As we work on the district, so special education contracted service tuition increases, that's in the level service numbers, so that's going to stay consistent. But then we anticipated on the 18th a savings due to the reorganization of district personnel at $100,000. So once again, the phone system is, we anticipate hopefully through the capital improvement that would be upgraded through the city. And then still under consideration from March 18th all the way to April 1st, we're still looking at retirements, circuit breaker funds, competitive grants such as the pathway. If you all recall, when we presented on the 18th, we didn't know about the pathways grant. And then, we're very fortunate. We're in the pathways program now. And then we'll be working with the principals in the team to see how that budget is going to be utilized. So then on March 18th, with all of that information I just provided, the city appropriation is down to a 5.81, and then the overall budget, by utilizing those other school funds, brings the overall budget down to a 3.69. So that brings us to today. So proposed budget for April 1st. So some more changes here. So once again, the bus monitors, we're going to continue with that, what I just explained, utilizing that new NHS program and working with Ms. Sokolowski and her team. Our music teacher, that's a necessity to enhance our music program. So that's going to be staying in there. They had additional $12,000. Once again, program changes, it's savings of the $85,000. And then really the new piece to this is the Pathways grant that we received $75,000. And now the team, once we receive that funding, the team will go and break that down. So we do anticipate the Pathways coordinator, some of that funding will be able to support that position. The Peterson program, the humanities teacher, we're looking to hold off on that at this point. We have one of our tech integrators with a model classroom. We'll be picking up a couple of those sections. And then if this does not get funded through our budget this year, that humanities teacher will be part of next year's budget. Because the more pathways we create, the more electives that we get to tie into a pathway. So that's kind of how that fits. The Peterson program, we already talked about how that's being funded. And then the savings, once again, I'm repeating myself here, so I apologize. But that savings due to the cohort of students and program enrollments at the high school. Some newer aspects for the savings due to the reorganization district-wide. We anticipated it was approximately $100,000, but we're closer to $200,000. So that's kind of new, which helps us bring down the costs. And then Mr. Littlehale will just give a brief summary for all the work he's doing on the bid for the past month, but we anticipate a cost savings there of $150,000. So what we projected, that is coming in a lot lower. So that also gives us an opportunity to reduce the city appropriation along with the overall budget. Still under consideration, as always, during the school year, you have staff members that are contemplating retirement. So we do anticipate some people that are considering it may move forward with retirement. And then also, we've currently in the budget for grade 1 is that extra grade 1 teacher for that high grade of kindergarten. Still under consideration, for example, the competitive grants that we're talking about. If you all remember the green light grant for the security, the RFP is going to be coming out within the next couple of weeks. So we anticipate writing that, and that might be another cost savings for our security. So with all of that being said, now we are at a city appropriation of a 4.99. And I won't read through all of these aspects, but just the grand total for our budget, overall budget, is a 2.99% increase. And then just this next page for you all, it just kind of breaks it down by cost center of where that comes in, and then just similar information. So on this, we have our previous presentations for the audience that's watching. There's a lot of detail in all these other presentations. This is kind of where we're landing right now on April 1st. And then behind that, I'll have Mr. Littlehale come on up. But then we get into the budget book that you all have. And what you'll see is everything I just talked about on the right-hand side, those notes, that's where they appear in the overall budget book. But as I said, as you look at the increases of the budget, it's really contractual costs. It's really those state and federal mandates. And it's just, as I said, there's not a lot of personnel added into this budget because I think we did a lot of work over the years. And then I also want to credit our team and Phil, as we're all reading about ESSER money and utilizing it for personnel. And a lot of districts are now having to cut a lot of essential personnel. But I think we did a nice job planning for the past 5 years. And we're not heavy into ESSER money on personnel. We did exactly what we said we were going to do. We're going to spend one-time expenses, upgrading our technology. So I do want to credit our principals and leadership team for working on that too. All right. Any questions? Yes.
Comment and a question. I really wanted to commend you for this budget book and the place that you are. So many districts are in a very difficult position this school year, especially after ESSER has left, and it's been a challenging time with the rates of inflation and cost of living adjustments. So I think everyone listening at home should know that percentage increases this low is quite rare for this school year. So I think the district has done a really great job of making sure we're not cutting any personnel and keeping the great people we have. So I think that's really amazing. So great job to your team. And then my question was just the largest percent increase was at the Bresnahan. Is that the 8th classroom is maybe accounting for that? Because I just didn't see anywhere else that would make that the largest.
Yeah.
So there's two parts to it. One is we're carrying that potential 8th first grade classroom, but also the special ed needs have gone up over the last couple of years as well.
Okay.
So we've had to add some staffing this year there as well.
Okay.
So that's what's driving it.
Thank you.
And we'll go.
Are you going to do the budget book? Because I had questions about the budget book.
So, I could go through the 31 pages line by line if you would like.
Yes.
But
You may begin.
I've done it so many times in my head, I prefer not to do it again. So there are comments in there. It's laid out like it has been the last couple of years. So there's no change in the presentation. Everything else is in there. So if you have questions, I would suggest ask your questions. Again, 31 pages, I do not want to go page by page.
How about school by school? Would that
Just whatever questions you have.
work for people? Go for it, Ms. Walker.
Okay, yeah, and I want to second Ms. Higgins' comments. I also appreciate the format. It's improved every year that we've reviewed this, and I know that's due to Mr. Littlehale's effort. So it's, to me, the comments are so helpful next to the line items.
I have to say that Lisa Furlong deserves a credit for
Okay,
making it look good.
nice job. So anyway, appreciate it, because it just makes it much cleaner and easier for us to review. So yeah, for the Bresnahan, I guess I had a question about what's driving the costs, and you answered that, so thank you. I did have a question about on literacy math and math intervention. There's some pretty not significant comparatively, not huge, but are those both salaries?
Part of what's going on is we had some staff shifts over the last couple of years to some higher, more experienced folks that moved into those slots.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why you see some of these salary numbers going up.
Okay.
On the other hand, you'll see some of the classroom numbers much lower because the higher paid staff are moving into those positions.
I do think we need to compensate our teachers, so I'm supportive of that. Substitutes went up by over 33%, so I'm just curious what's driving that.
Substitutes is one of those lines that we've never budgeted enough, and so we've taken the opportunity this year to put some additional funding into that line to try to get closer to reality. If you look back over the last 3 or 4 years, those numbers have not changed. So one of the focus for this year.
Great. All I had for this one.
So with the substitute line item, you're just saying that you made it reflective of reality? Is that basically what?
Reality may be too strong of a term.
Okay.
But we're trying to get it closer to what we've been historically spending on those lines.
Got it.
So that at the end of the year, I'm not going through my exercise of shifting money around to make sure I've got enough of those lines to pay for it. But I also would like to commend the principals that have been doing maybe it's because of the weather this year, I don't know, but they've been doing a great job in terms of the what we've been spending on substitutes this year.
So it's not that we're seeing an increase in teacher
No,
absences?
it's just been, I will use what I was going to say because it's not polite, it's just been a poor budgeting of that line for the 3 years that I've been here. And
Okay.
I'll take responsibility for that.
Any other questions on the Bresnahan budget?
If you could just dig into thank you for identifying so it's about 250,000 increase in special ed. If you could just talk a little bit about the specifics of that.
Well, I think there's two parts to that. One is just the cohort of students that we have there, and two, for the budget for this year, I shorted them IAs. And so when the school year started, Jamie had mentioned during last year that she needed additional IAs. It never got put into the budget. So that was as I like to call it, a fill budget mistake. So we've addressing that for this year so that the number of IAs that are in there are actually correct in terms of the budgeted number.
And that accounts for the increase almost in its entirety? Okay.
Any other questions on Bresnahan? And we'll move on to Mullen. Go ahead, Ms. Walker.
Mine's just a clarifying question. There are two special ed line items. They're not exactly the same. One says special education, one says special ed guidance. Can you just clarify what the difference?
The special ed guidance are your adjustment counselors.
Okay.
Yeah, it was something we talked about last year and the year before, that we had historically had the adjustment counselors and high school guidance counselors all mixed together. So I think it was for this year's budget, we blew them out. And so that's why they're shown separately on the budget. And you'll see that both, you'll also see those at the NOC.
Thank you.
Other questions on Mullen? Go ahead, Ms. Higgins.
Just wondering why there isn't a ELA intervention line item. There's a math intervention, but not an ELA.
Well, the ELA budget is all within the curriculum budget at the end. So you got me on that one, actually. What page are you on?
Just the Mullen summary.
Yeah. I don't know the answer. It could just be it's budgeted incorrectly, and I've got it in the wrong line. I'll have to get back to you on that one.
Okay. I mean, it does look like you do have a line item for ELA, right, as you said, district-wide, so maybe you could just clarify why it's not also broken down as
Okay, so it's ELA, not ELL, I misheard. Okay. I will get back to you on that one.
Go ahead, Mr. Callahan.
The music line item of the Mullen is 190% up. I guess we just hired another music.
Well, there was such a small number to start with, and then we increased one position by 0.2. And I realized after I put this together, I have one music teacher in the wrong school, which is artificially including up the Mullen number.
Okay. Can you just put the comment in there about that? I'm sure.
Well, it will get fixed.
Okay, I'm sure council's going to ask about that.
Yeah, so it won't be in the final version. That will get fixed.
Okay, thanks.
Well, it does say in the note that it's a shared position between NOC and Mullen.
Although, for the record, I would support that huge an increase in the music program.
So is it, I know we're not there yet, but is it double listed then? Is that how you did it?
No, it's not double listed. I just have a position budgeted in the incorrect school.
So you say it should be on the NOC budget? Is that what you're saying?
Half of it should be at the NOC, half of it should be at the Mullen.
Okay. Okay, instead of,
There's no double counting. The number of FTEs is correct. It's just where I'm reporting it is not where it should be.
so right now it's just listed in Mullen?
Yes.
And then you'll split it?
Correct.
Got it, okay.
Darn, you did catch that one.
Other questions on Mullen? All right, moving on to NOC then.
Mr. Hall, just, my question is just on the operation plan, and I think there's a few places where it's a pretty big increase for each school.
Yes.
So what is driving the operation plan?
So in terms of operation plans, the biggest driver is in utilities. The cost of electricity is, generation of electricity is up by 33%. We've gone from 9 cent a kilowatt hour to 12 cents in the new contract that we have. So that's the driver there. We also increased the natural gas line by about 5% year over year. And as I stated last year and the year before, the new reality is everything's more expensive. And so we have been, over the last couple of years, increasing Steve's line so we make sure we've got enough money. And even this year, we're running kind of tight in some of those lines. So it's inflation in terms of some of those things.
Any other NOC questions? Go ahead.
One more question. This might be something that you just want to circle back on, but for the NOC, you do not have math intervention there, but you do have reading. So reading, there's a reading at the NOC and no math, and in the Mullen, there's a math and no reading. I'm not sure if maybe those things should be shared, but just from an outsider's perspective, I'm not seeing the literacy support at the Mullen, and then at the NOC, where we know we're having some challenges with our math testing scores, and then we're not seeing math intervention, showing up there. So I just wanted to see how those FTEs are corresponding.
I'll go back through the detailed staff listing and make sure we've got them in the assignments in the correct categories. Sometimes I do not quite understand the position of the
All set with NOC? Moving on to the high school.
Can you elaborate on the technology increase, which is about 45% over last year? I'm sorry, it's on the
Page
page,
14?
it's on page 13, and then the backup is on page 14. So it's technology, the technology category.
It's for personnel.
Oh.
Professional salaries.
It's because we budgeted that position at a master step 5 for this year's budget.
Okay.
And the person we hired was like a master's plus step 12 or something. So we ended up hiring far above what we budgeted for that position. Which on the other hand, some of the other positions that we brought in this year, we were very fortunate, from my perspective, fortunate that we were able to bring in good staff, but lower cost. I hate to say it that way, but you know.
That's already been filled, and we just hired
Yes.
at a
That's
higher anticipated
It's a technology
level.
integration
Got it.
specialist that was added to this year's budget.
Okay,
Right, that's one of those internal roles
right.
with a veteran
Okay.
teacher.
And same comment on the substitutes, just
Same
trying
thing.
to adjust to be more
Exactly.
realistic?
I mean, did we really blow out the substitute budget at the high school last year?
We have gone through, we have overspent those lines every year that I could see going back as far back as you can go. So it's a challenge in any district you go to, trying to figure out how much you need to put for substitutes. You know.
Just as a commentary, could you speak to, it seems like you've found cost savings in special education at all of the higher, at the upper levels, grade levels, at the NOC and the high school in particular. Can you just speak to how that was achieved?
Yeah, the superintendent know that one.
That's similar to the cohorts of students being served. For example, at the high school, we have the post-grad program, but the cohort of students are going to be moving on, so they're going to be graduating. And similar to a cohort of students at the NOC, where we can consolidate some of those programs. And then the other piece, so as Phil was talking about, a lot of, like for the interventionists, for example, we have a veteran teacher who goes from the classroom to intervention. That's why that cost is comes in a lot higher. And the same thing for that tech integrator, who's a veteran teacher. So on that side, it's a high cost, but below to replace that teacher in the classroom that's where you get the cost savings.
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Under athletics, pretty big increase percentage-wise for contracted services. This is on page 16.
Mhm.
And then sports facility rentals.
Well, sports facilities rentals had to go up. The cost of those has been increasing over the last couple of years. So looking at that, it made sense that we had to increase that line. Contracted services, the same thing. It's sort of a catch-all, so what goes in there. But I will also tell you that for the funding, for funding that increase, part of it is coming from the general fund, but also part of it is coming from the revolving fund. So the full thing is not falling on directly on to the general fund.
Most who don't understand what this is, what are sports facility rentals?
So that's,
Like hockey.
so that's ice hockey,
Okay.
tennis courts,
Yeah.
golf,
Okay.
greens fees for the golf teams.
And generally, what would contracted services be?
It's the folks who work at the games as referees or
Yeah.
other people.
Okay.
They're not our employees, so they are contracted services.
Okay.
I should know that better than that by now.
Would you ever be able to break down the cost to play a sport and how much of that goes towards the uniform?
Have I and can I?
Would one be able to? I'm just looking at that cost. So it went 10,000 and then 9,800 and then 20,000.
Yep. So the answer to that is yes. We've got the data to do that. If we can get this pretty much nailed down, then I will take the time to go through that as an additional add-on, so that people can see that. And I know we've been talking about that for a couple of years. We did it once, we can do it again. Again, Kyle had some requests that were reasonable in terms of we hadn't changed the uniform line for X number of years, so that one was due for an increase as well as for the ice time and the rental of the greens fees.
Yeah, I do think it would be helpful at some point, it doesn't have to be part of this budget process, to get more information on breakdown by sport.
Where does your fee go?
Well, and also breakdown by sport. Again, I'm comfortable with this as presented, although, I'm sure there are other questions, but, have you guys done that at FinCom? Have you had a breakdown by sport discussion?
No.
Not this year. We had a chart we had
Just
looked
a
at last year.
generic number for the sport, but not within each one.
Any other questions on the high school? Okay, we'll move on to the district-wide.
So I'm going to make a couple comments on this. So, district-wide, in terms of transportation, as the superintendent said, we're able to reduce that budgeted number. It's not a cost savings; it's a reduction of the increase that we're looking for based on what we anticipate the bus contract will look like for next year. Also, we continue to get, I'm going to use the term hammered by special ed increases in terms of out-of-district tuitions as well as transportation. If you go back and look historically at special ed transportation, 4 or 5 years ago, we were budgeting about $650,000 for that. For fiscal year 25, we're budgeting $1.1 million. So, and same thing with tuitions. 2 years ago, we were budgeting about $3.3 million. For this year, for next year, it's $4.5 million. And it's difficult for all the districts. I think you're all aware of that. And so those are, the two big cost drivers when you look at the district-wide budget.
Is that what is in service?
In service is, Lisa Murray, can you explain that?
Yes. PD?
In services of professionals.
Yeah.
PD.
Hi, good evening. In-service is what we use for professional development.
Oh, yeah, it is quite a bit higher at the district level. Is that what you're looking at?
Yeah, and I was just looking, there is a breakdown on page 21 of what those are.
We have to refer to the superintendent on that.
Okay, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Murray. So, Superintendent, do you have any more details? So there's definitely some in here that weren't, is it just that we hadn't broken it down this way before, or what's the?
It's, well, I think there's a couple things. I think we're showing it in a different way, but our in-service credits are graduation credit that will assist with step and columns. So it's working, with our teachers and union to try to anticipate, what those salaries are going to be in addition to the raises. So it's their grad credit that they can get to move on the scale.
Okay.
So are you saying that's the district's cost? Like you're paying for them to complete graduate work?
No, once they complete the graduate work, that's their,
They get a bump.
that's their salary. So if I'm master's 5 and I move to master's 15 or plus, then on the scale, teacher's pay scale, I receive more money.
Right.
Yep.
So, but that's the explanation for why there's this
Big jump.
in in-service? Okay.
Well, and I guess just to follow up on it, it looks like there's a number of new items in that in-service, and I'm just curious if those were pulled out of other sections, like contracted service we hadn't budgeted before under in-service, we hadn't contracted for mentoring.
Sorry, what page is
It's
that?
page 21. So, contracted services, we hadn't had a line item for previously, it looks like. There's nothing in the history.
Yeah, is this-
Mentoring and teaching fellows. Is that something where we just pulled? maybe
Teaching
an
fellows has
adjustment?
been part, yeah.
Okay.
I'm just, Phil, is this something that you wrote down further? Ones?
So let me
Yeah, jump in.
So part of it is the teaching fellows were buried elsewhere in the budget. We would rip it out of either substitutes or wherever else we had it. We had not done historically, at least since I've been here. Again, did a good job of budgeting that.
Accurate.
No.
No.
What do you got?
All right, I got it. So teaching fellows, we had budgeted
Budgeted last year $60,000 for. We did not utilize all those funds. We did a survey with the principals where they let us know how many fellows they would like in their buildings. We already know that next year it will be about 3 fellows, so that will be the $45,000 there. And then mentoring is 0. Let's see, in-service tuition, contracted services, that potentially could be, we've been using Athena Learning for our year 2 and 3 mentees. And that's all I've got.
Thank you, Ms. Ippolito. I think my question was for Phil, because it seems like we've reclassified things. They weren't in prior history, and that's what I think you're
I'm just giving some accuracy that fellows was in this line item.
Got it.
The last 2 years. Okay, great.
So Phil, maybe, if it was in that line item, it's not showing up in the history. So I know that you've reclassified some things. and
I reclassified
Maybe you could
it.
just.
I'll have to get back
add
to
a
you
note.
where
Yeah,
it
that's
came
fine.
from.
I get that.
It's, again, one of those things where we're trying to get a little more detail for you
Yeah.
folks to see it.
I know, and it's not always easy. But so if you could add some comments when you figure that out. Awesome, thank you.
Anything else on district-wide? Okay, so moving ahead from there,
So then there behind you is just taking some of the other departments and pulling them together, so you have special ed, buildings and grounds, athletics, and technology, as well as curriculum, just so you can pull those together. Because those are costs that are spread across the 4 major cost centers.
so for our new folks, these last sections are not in addition to what we just looked at, it's just classifying everything in a different way. So with the header special education, that's all special ed costs across the schools and district, and then technology and so on. So were there any questions in this breakdown? Anything you wanted to say about anything here, Mr. Littlehill?
Well, again, I think if you look at special ed, you'll see some of the increases in terms of the tuition line, especially if you go back and look at fiscal year '23, as well as the transportation going up as well. If you look at buildings and grounds, you'll see that the overall increase is a pretty hefty increase. And again, that's due to the increase in utilities as well as the expenses for paper and things like that. Other than that, athletics is there, and again, it's a repeat what's already in the high school one. It's just a one page you can see in that as well. So other than that, in my inability to explain in service, any other questions? And so we'll go back, we'll add some additional comments. I'll clean up the presentation in terms of the interventions, make sure we get that straightened out, and I will come up with an answer for the in-service. And if I can't, I won't be here at the next meeting.
That's not true.
That seems drastic.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. So I think, as we said, we'll go back with the questions and then highlight those different areas for more clarity. But as we said, overall, this is where we're coming in at as of April 1st. It's not a joke. It's not a real budget. That was my April Fool's joke. Didn't go over well. No, all kidding aside, I really believe, right now, I think we've done a lot of hard work on this. I always think that we always try to meet the needs of our students. Each year, we look at our programs, we look at our resources, we look at staffing patterns, and then to meet the needs of the students that are coming to us, that are sitting in front of us in September. So I don't think since I've been here, we've really ever been status quo. I think we're always up to new challenges, and I really believe that this budget reflects, as I said, a lot of these costs are the non-personnel, but overall, the staffing patterns I think are going to address the needs of our district even better, especially with the restructuring that we proposed a couple weeks ago. So there you go.
Okay, thank you. Any final questions, comments? What do you think? Can we afford this? That's the big question.
No comment.
No.
No, great job, Superintendent.
Thank you.
I'd like to see if there's any, I'd just like to see if there's any public comment first before I say anything.
Absolutely, yes. We didn't have anyone sign up, but is there anyone here who would like to offer public comment on the budget specifically? Not seeing any hands. Go ahead.
So I guess for folks who are tuned in from home, I know there's tons of people watching tonight or will watch the rebroadcast. Next steps in the budget process for us, we'll have another meeting. You'll revise the budget book to reflect comments, can incorporate any additional feedback we might give you tonight. And that'll be at our next regular business meeting?
23rd.
Okay. And that's when we make our final vote on the budget to recommend, to vote for the city to then take forward to City Council. So I guess, Mayor, do you have any insight into how this fits into the overall budget at this point? I mean, now's the time I feel like to give the superintendent guidance if we can.
No, I think, like I said, I think the superintendent has done a great job. I'll go back with this and talk to our people, but I think we're going in the right direction here.
Okay. I think it would be if you do have feeling like it would be nice to talk about it at the next meeting, so where you feel like we as a group, as a body, are making a realistic recommendation. Sure. But I agree. I feel like you've done some good. The process has been good in terms of starting from level service and then looking at what our overall goals are and then adjusting. I appreciate the iterative process.
Thank you. I have a good team back there, so I'm very lucky.
And I'll just echo what Member Higgins kind of started out with. I had my mayor's meeting last week, and a lot of these conversations around budgets we had, and I do think we're in a much better situation than a lot of districts. And I know we haven't just gone through a teacher negotiation either. That will be happening next year, but like I said, there are some districts that are really struggling, and the fact that we can keep doing what we're doing and even add to it, even if it's just a little bit, is a real positive right now.
All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone feel like they need a break, or should we just call to order and jump back in? All good?
What's up on the superintendent brought sandwiches?
What?
Another
Brought
April-
sandwiches.
Another April Fool.
They're in my car.
That's not a joke.
It's not a joke? All right, you can call us order. Start.
All right.
Yeah.
We're back. April Fools.
Like we never left.
Business meeting, part 2. Mrs. Yell, will you take the roll, please? Do I have to? Yeah, we have to take a roll again. Yeah. Here.
Sarah Paul?
Here.
Andrew Boulder?
Present?
Brian Callahan?
Still here.
Brianna Higgins.
Here.
Kathleen Shaw.
Here.
Juliet Walker.
Present.
All right, we do not have to do the pledge again, and I will turn it over now to Vice Chair Hall, and we'll get to public comment.
Do you mind just grabbing the clipboard there, Ms. Yell? And I'll ask also, did anyone sign in for public comment?
No.
For the business meeting portion?
Nobody.
All right, thank you for checking. So then we will move right along to the consent agenda, which is you, Mr. Callahan, with the warrant.
I move that the following named bills of the Newburyport Public Schools amounting in the aggregate $102,277.58 be approved and forwarded to the city auditor for payment. There are no conflicts.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We also have one set of minutes to approve from our last meeting on March 18th. Are there any corrections?
I did have something I thought would be helpful to clarify, not in an extensive fashion, why we had 2 votes.
Yeah, maybe just a sentence about
That we had agreed to have a majority, that the first roll call did not result in a majority.
Yeah. You got that, Ms. Yell?
So on page 3, Juliet, the third bullet there, it says 2 roll call votes were taken. Do you want me to enhance that sentence there to say something, or do you want something in between the 2 roll call
I think in between
votes?
maybe in between, I don't really have a strong preference, but just saying that, there was a second roll call vote was taken because none of the nominated candidates
Received
were
the
able to
majority.
get a majority of the votes.
Thank you. Any other corrections or additions? Okay, can I get a motion to approve the March 18th minutes?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, Superintendent, you've got a job description for us for team facilitator.
Correct.
Want to speak to that?
Sure. So as part of the restructuring, this was an existing position that was in the NTA. And speaking to Ms. Walker, and I think trying to follow a similar process so everything goes through our job descriptions and approval process, we included this one in here. So basically the team facilitator, this was a position that was already established in back, I want to say 2013 and 14. So service providers and or special education teachers used to run those team meetings. And then I think there was some history here in the sense of leadership throughout the district, teacher leadership, that these positions were then replaced with administration. So with that being said, meeting with our executive board and just moving forward on a current job description. So we made some modifications to who they report to the program supervisor. So there's an existing position that we modified, which fits into our policy for approval by school committee.
So I noticed that's just the one thing highlighted is reports to. So is that
Correct.
really the only change in this position?
Yeah. Because it was already an existing position.
So this, maybe I'm thinking of something different on the, on the chart that you made. I thought there was something about eliminating teaching responsibilities or?
Yes. Yeah. So this person's just going to run team meetings.
But nothing else changes in the job description?
Nope.
Okay.
So they run the team meetings, so their direct supervisor is the program supervisor and or the principal.
Okay. Does anyone else have questions about this job description? Okay, if not, we can get a motion to approve. I don't have that, the policy number is here.
Yep, I'll move to approve the revised and updated job description for team facilitator to support the reorganization plan approved at the last meeting.
Second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. You again, Superintendent.
All right.
Chronic absenteeism.
All right, I think I'll just go back up. So we, as part of our accountability, and I think a few discussions that we had in past school committee meetings, we talked about chronic absenteeism, and the principals presented, hopefully this comes up. Yeah. There we go. There we go. The principals presented some of their data, accountability data regarding absenteeism. So what we've done here tonight is kind of give an overview of absenteeism in Newburyport Public Schools and what we have in place and kind of what we're trying to do moving forward. So if you don't know, Massachusetts attendance is a requirement. So attendance for school ages 6 to 16, daily attendance is required. There's DESE regulations and guidance around attendance. And then chronic absenteeism is categorized as 10% of the school year or 18 days for a student. So it also ties into our policy about school committee policy about attendance. So I'm not going to read you all of this information, but it also, not only from the state, but also within our school attendance policies, it's there through school committee. So this is how we track our attendance. So you have daily attendance, it's tracked in our student information. So when a student is absent, a phone call goes home at the elementary and middle school and emails at the high school. So that will go right to the parents. And then our attendance team. So every school has an attendance team. They meet bi-weekly. And it's made up of members, from principals, adjustment counselors, nurses, and they continue to monitor the student attendance. And then students who have 5 or more absences receive a letter and a phone call from a member of the attendance team. And then the high school team also tracks school level trends and data. So for example, not only like at the high school, if you have a student that's missing a class, if they have 6 classes and all of a sudden there's 1 class that they're missing and things like that. And then DESE collects the state collects our attendance data, but attendance data does not consider whether if it's an excused absence or not excused absence. It's just an absence is an absence. So for our prevention and intervention, so our administration does a lot of work. They do the attendance letters, they communicate with parents, they work with the building-based attendance teams. Our nurses are a key role. So if our nurses are out there listening, I want to thank them. They do so much for us, especially at team meetings and a lot of, this is just another role that they will play with the attendance. Our counselors, social workers, and BCBAs also are part of that. Will be part of those. And then obviously our educators and teachers. So really when students, on a biweekly basis, student attendance is something that is being monitored throughout the school year. And we have those weekly meetings. So although we didn't meet, I wanted to kind of show this, although we did not meet the accountability where we were supposed to, you can see over the past, since before the pandemic, where we were last year and where we are this year, we are, I guess, moving in the right direction. And then the high school did not receive the attendance priority school because the state was looking for near 50% reduction from one year to the next. The other schools, although they had a reduction, they didn't meet that criteria, and we're not near the pre-pandemic attendance. So then we have, I had our principals and administration kind of take a look at our attendance just to report. So we have 10 days absence to this point. And then they kind of broke it down for medical, social, emotional. Each school kind of, for this graph, kind of presented in different ways. But you can see why the nurses are so involved because of the medical scenarios, and then our counselors also are there at the table for the social emotional aspects, and then just everyday attendance issues. So what we are seeing is there are some students that, because of planned vacations, they're not going to miss the 18 days on a vacation, but sometimes what ends up happening, I think some families will go away, for 5 days or so, and then all of a sudden the student, gets strep throat or sick or is injured. So that's also, when we look at the data, that's also an aspect that we take in consideration. So I think as we were saying, the attendance teams are meeting every 2 weeks, so they know all of these students and kind of understand that. The other piece that we also look at is students that are absent for injury or absent because of medical needs. Work is being sent home, so a lot of the students, although they might hit chronic absenteeism, are still performing pretty well because they kept up with their studies. But our teams are really working with those students, the social emotional side, or students that might have some mental health issues by being anxious or depressed or school phobic, and things of that nature. So for our next steps in this, so we applied, or we received the grant to assist us with the chronic absenteeism. So you can see the steps that we have in place, but just like everything, you can always get better. And I think what we're looking to do is focus on the increased family engagement and then invest in some tools to help us analyze the attendance. So when we look at for example, the breakdown of why students are absent, general medical, we could probably break down that data just a little bit more. Is it medical because of the flu? Is it medical because of a mental health issue? And those are the types of feedback that we received from our attendance teams. And then the other aspect is the increase of family engagement. Almost, I think, having a liaison just really focused and reaching out to those families. And I think, as Dr. Higgins said at a previous meeting, instead of asking them to come see us, it's really going out and going to see them and find out what's happening. So that's where we're at. We're still planning on that grant. Those funds have to be used by September 30th of next year. But we do anticipate some of that funding will probably go to stipends, and then maybe some enhancement of the technology tools for our attendance. But that's our attendance update.
So I think one of the things as a parent that I noticed a stark change in is the amount of communications that we got about protocols for whether somebody should go to school or not. And that was it was like night and day from one year to the next. And I know that's driven because that's true at the state and national level too. We just stopped getting guidance basically once COVID was over. So I wonder if that's part of your plan, is to because I just communicate what when it's appropriate for your child to stay home, what qualifies as a risk. I mean, I don't even know if you have that ability to say that, but is there some plan to give that kind of
Yeah, I think that's part of
outreach?
that. Part of the plan is that family engagement is to
Yeah.
have communication going out that, like, clearly, almost going back to the pre-COVID,
Right.
pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
So what, because the guidelines have changed, and so if you're not feeling well, to stay home for a week is not, obviously you work with parents and they gotta use their judgment, but maybe give more guidance for
Right.
families when a child's sick,
Right.
especially at the younger grades.
You're done? You want to go, Michelle?
Oh, yeah, just a quickie. In terms of the Bresnahan, it wasn't broken down, which was accounted for social emotional, and I'm just curious about that.
Yeah, I think when we asked, we kind of wanted like some general data, and I think that this is what our administration gave us for the younger kids. So, but we can break this down even further. I mean, when we're looking at these numbers, 65%, 19, we have specific students and families at that attendance meeting. So they're not looking at percentages, they know who these students are, and so I think it was more for confidentiality and trying to, kind of put everyone in general terms. But yeah, the medical, the sick, and the vacation time.
I'm just thinking of, that's the age with a lot of separation anxiety.
Correct.
So that, I'm just curious.
Yeah, I think just like anytime we're looking at data, one data point leads you to the next data point. So when you're looking at the Bresnahan school and you start looking at literacy and math, is there a correlation? Although, maybe these students aren't need social emotional support, but their absences from school and missing that direct instruction on a daily basis that the other students are getting. So our teams are looking at that pretty closely now too. Yes.
So, this is obviously at risk, right? Whereas they're not end of year numbers. But if you were, the average of those K-8 schools is 17%, which is 5 percentage points higher than last year's numbers. I mean, is that sort of the feeling of the district that we're trending in the wrong direction?
No, I think, right now this is a 10-day absence. But, obviously we would like this lower at the a little bit more than the midway point. So I think there's more of an effort of the attendance teams really reaching out to these families. But we're anticipating, but hopefully by the end of this year, that will continue to trend down, with the communication.
Go ahead.
I have several questions.
Go for it.
With the, it's our policy, but who is the role that makes the determination that the absence is reportedly due to illness, but then they want a doctor's note? Who is the administrator that makes that call? And is that applied the same way across all the schools and across all students?
Any type of medical absence, our nurses play a role in that, and then work with the administration.
What about, I guess I'm trying to figure out, when they're going to, how do I say this? They want to request a doctor's note, but you can be sick from any number of things and not waste your day.
That's the challenge, right?
And then who in the administration makes a call and says, hey parent,
right,
I don't believe that your kid is sick. I want a doctor's note.
It's me.
It's Sean.
I make house calls during my lunchtime, checking on sick kids.
And I only ask because the language, and I know we just went over this recently, but and I wish I'd noticed it then, and maybe it's just me, but the absence reportedly due to illness seems to be somewhat accusatory. So, who is that person? Is it the principal that makes the final call, or the nurse?
He's the principal working with the family.
Okay.
Yeah. And I think that's the, obviously you want doctor's notes and medical documentation, but every scenario is a little bit different.
Yeah, you could feel like garbage for 2 days for nothing, right? So, okay. The other questions I have.
Well, Ferris Bueller wasn't really sick either.
That's true.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, I've lost my spot in here. It's unfortunate the state, has this fuzzy math that, if our kids are sick and they have an excused medical absence, it's excused. But the state says, sorry, too bad. That's irresponsible in my opinion, especially with COVID being a big part of it. And that 5-day rule only went away, like 3 months ago or something?
Yeah.
So can you go back to that chart?
Yeah. This one?
Right, so the whole year of 2022 and then 23, that thing only went away in like January. Right?
And I think it goes back to Ms. Walker's comment of communicating to parents that, some people might still be working under the, 5 days. Students aren't feeling well, I'm going to keep them home for 5 days.
There was one more question. Can you know, and I know the principals just kind of got this together probably pretty quickly, the Mullen combined medical and vacation, I think that's something that really needs to be split out. That's vacation is not ill. Right. So
as because it's you have your attendance team, so there's a lot of. I think that we're trying to display this publicly in the sense of being very general.
Right. I just think it would be best if, it's my opinion, that all the schools have the same breakdown.
Correct. Yeah, that's something I think.
Medical, and I'm also worried, religious exemption, you're never going to win against the state with that. If you say your religious day off that we don't happen to, have a day off for in this district,
right,
you're off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely.
You want to get Mr. Riley down here? We can talk about it.
I think. Obviously, I think it's correlating. The attendance to performance. Also. Well,
I know for us that's great, but they don't. Right. It doesn't matter to the state, right? We've talked about this before, where the kid's getting all A's and has whatever emotional issues and doesn't come to school for 11 days. While certainly unfortunate, is not detrimental necessarily to that student. So I guess my final question is, what is the actual penalty from the state if we don't meet targets? Because it comes up every year at the calendar, and everybody will laugh that we don't have those half days on Fridays before holiday weeks and Monday holidays because we'll get in trouble. What is the penalty?
I don't think it's just you're not going to meet your accountability.
Right, I know, but eventually,
they're not. I don't.
What happens?
You're not going to lose funding or anything like that.
All right.
I believe, don't hold me to this, the chronic absenteeism in the accountability system is worth about 5%. So it's
of the
not.
Whole thing.
Yes, it's exceedingly tiny. So whether you meet it or don't meet it, it's not really going to shift your overall accountability. I don't think, for the most part, it's a state way to. The state's accountability system names the things that the state feels are important in a school system, right? And they're going to name that attendance is important in a school system, right? And you can say that, 90% of your kids come to school, but it's a more accurate measure, I think, to count the other way, right? Let's count how many kids are chronically absent versus, saying I have a 94% rate versus 95% rate. So they're just naming that attendance is important. Sure. Nothing's going to happen. There's no penalty. There's no consequence. Your overall accountability can shift slightly, but at a 5% out of the whole system, it's going to shift a point or two, right? Sure. It's not really going to matter. It's just a point of what is the attendance like in this district overall?
Yeah, I know, and it may be the definition of the word chronic that's being used inappropriately, because the kid who doesn't go to school for 3 weeks because he doesn't feel like it, that's chronic absenteeism. Missing 5 days for COVID and then 5 days over the rest of the course of the year for another thing is totally different. I just wish the state would pay attention to that and actually be able to break that out and say, hey, your accountability is X, but we realize that you had a crazy 2 weeks of stomach bug in your district. That's all. That's my statement. I yield.
So I just wanted to talk a little bit about the vacation discussion, because I think it would be helpful to know a little bit more of a breakdown by grade. I also think this is something that we as a school committee can maybe play a role in terms of supporting communication. I think a lot of the other things are things we have to address with resources. We have to make sure that we are getting to the bottom of, medical issues and social emotional issues and family issues, and that is really largely a district responsibility to figure that out. But as a school committee, we can play a role in just sort of helping you communicate, and understanding that it's not just about chronic absenteeism, it's also about if there's it's a slippery slope. Like if families are not understanding the impact that taking a few days here and a few days there has, not just on their kids, but the teachers that have to then help that child make up for, and maybe they're doing fine grade-wise, but it's probably largely because the teachers are supporting them when they go out. They're providing the materials they need when they get back, and they're giving them heads up beforehand, and that's a lot of burden on the teachers. In addition, kids not being in school around vacation, it affects the classroom dynamic, and it affects the other kids who are part of that classroom. Having your peers not at school with you, your family's not going on vacation, and half your class is out it's demoralizing. So I think that to me is something, as a school committee, I would like us to see, a little more. We could get a handle on that and maybe figure out ways to tackle that in a strategic way. Because I do think those numbers are disturbing, and if a big part of it is vacation, then I think it's something that we can tackle as a school committee in a district. The larger stuff is also concerning, and we can tackle that in different ways, but I think the vacation is a messaging thing, and it's something we should really take seriously.
That'd be great.
Yeah, just adding on, I agree with Mr. Callahan. I'd love to see consistent reporting categories across the schools. I think it would just be easier to understand where these numbers are coming from. I know that DESE doesn't care why kids are out, but we absolutely do care, because that's how we can figure out how to mitigate the situation and improve. The 19% and the 22% is like, wow. So like a fifth of the kids are chronically absent. I also think it would be helpful if there was any way to see the percentages in our high needs population. I know that can get tricky because we don't want to be identifying. But maybe if we did it district-wide, that could be one way to look at that, because I know, and that's one reason that DESE wants us looking at chronic absenteeism, is the impact particularly on high needs students who especially can't afford to have all of these absences. So it would just be interesting to know that variable, if that's possible.
We can take a look at it I would say, maybe towards the end of this school year.
Great.
Because right now, they're not chronically absent. The ones that we're showing is that they're at 10. So, and it's 18.
So just at that pace through the year.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Yeah. So I guess this would be great for a follow-up on a June agenda.
Yeah.
Great.
We'll have better numbers by then anyway. So, yes. All right.
Anyone else? Did you want to say something, Mr. Poker?
Well, just in terms of commentary, this is by no means database, but just given the broader context, which is the national numbers and the state numbers on this are staggering in terms of chronic absenteeism. Are you the broader question is sort of, are you surprised, or did you feel like this is where we would probably be at this point in the year? I know, I'm putting you on the spot, I know, because you just said we got to get some real data at the end of the year when these numbers kind of shake out.
Yeah, I mean, as we monitor, as I said, so when you're looking at the percentages, the attendance, we know the students right now that are requiring a lot of our attention, because we don't want them to be at the 18, but there's also, back to Ms. Walker's point, there are also those situations that people are taking time off that we're communicating to the parents, like, we don't want your child to be labeled chronic absent, right? So,
do you feel like these are increasing struggles? Meaning, I mean, a lot of this was in the context of COVID.
I think we're trending in the right direction. From last year to this year, has been an emphasis of the school. So I think those attendance committees in each building has been very helpful. I think, as Mr. Callahan also said, like the COVID restrictions and all that have now been lifted, but I do believe there are probably, some parents that when the child is sick or has a cough, they're following those COVID guidelines. So I think that's also having communication with them. I think it's almost, the more we're back since the pandemic, I think the better things are getting. So I think this is just one area of bringing like that sense of normalcy back into the schools. So I'm anticipating those, we're going to continue to trend in the right direction. That's the goal. So.
Good. No, thank you for speaking to the pattern, because these are some really sticky issues that everybody is dealing with. And
Right.
the communication alone, but we've got counter movements too.
Right.
Still,
and I think it's a state issue. So, and I think the other fortunate thing for myself is I'm part of the North Shore Superintendent Roundtable. So it's the 24 districts in the
Right.
entire. So we have these type of conversations. There are some other school districts that are trending in the wrong direction still. So, I'm feeling pretty confident the work that we're doing and the focus that the principals have right now on attendance. Hopefully we'll be back to those, pre-pandemic numbers again.
All right, thank you.
All right.
So for subcommittee updates, we'll start with you, Mr. Callahan, for FinCom.
Thank you. We met last week? 2 weeks ago. Thank you, Mr. Littlehill. Talked about the budget, so we don't have to go over that again. And the bus contract, which we're going to go over at a special FinCom meeting on Thursday morning. You still available, Mr. Norton?
Yes.
Okay. We can do that remote or in Phil's office, whatever you guys want to do. It's be very quick. That's that.
Okay. Policy, Ms. Walker.
Okay, so tonight we have some policies for first reading that the subcommittee voted to bring forward to the full school committee. So this will wrap up our policy audit of all of our policies with the final revisions to sections K and L. In addition, we are bringing forward some other items from section J that were needed another round of review. So I will go through those per our normal standards and what we've done in the past. So first, section J, a JICB or JICC, which is the student conduct on school buses. The MASC version of the policy was cross-referenced to EEA-EC, which we had previously adopted some revisions to as a school committee. So that is also included in the packet to make a minor wording change. But the Newburyport version has elements that could be considered rules or procedures, so we were deciding whether we should try to revise that, and after discussion, the policy subcommittee voted to recommend minor revisions to the existing JICB/JICC, but not to replace it as had been recommended by MASC. And at the same time, we also, as I mentioned, recommended a revision to EEA-EC wording. JRD is student photographs. We merged the two versions, the MASC and our current version, and you'll see that in your packet. Section K, Community Relations, KAA, which was also Policy Community Relations. This is a Newburyport document only. The document is more procedure than policy, addresses school committee specifically. So the MASC suggests if we do want to keep it, it would be better in section B, which is where we have school committee related policies. So that's the recommendation of the subcommittee, to keep it, but to recode it. KBA, which is school parent guardian relations goals, and we just updated some of the wording, parent guardian in specific. And then matters of student conduct rather than matters of correction. KBE, relations of parent booster organizations. We are recommending adopting the MASC version because it combines parent, it puts more emphasis on organizing compliance with regulations of the groups. KCB, community involvement in decision making. we're recommending to remove that because the policy was removed from the MASC reference manual. KDB, public's right to know. Policies match, we just had some wording differences. KDD, news media relations / news releases. Policies match except for some wording differences. KHA, public solicitations in schools. Some changes. The first part of the Newburyport version already matched the MASC version, so we pulled in the rest. We suggested removing the part that was more procedural. KI, visitors to the schools. The policies match except for some wording differences. KLK, relation with local government authorities. We left it in place. I think we made some minor adjustments. And then Section L, education agency relations. LBC, relations with non-public schools. We updated it to make it more consistent with the MASC version, which is about private school approval. For those of you who didn't know that, we have to approve private schools. So I just scanned through the revisions, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions people might have on the revisions, or we can talk about them more.
Could you just clarify the private school approval?
Yeah, so that is the last one. Let me scan forward to that one. So LBC, relations with non-public schools, the state law, we added the language at the beginning which clarifies that state law requires that the school committee approve the establishment of new private schools within the municipality. And therefore, the language in that policy should reflect the approval of private schools and the process that we're supposed to follow to do that. I think previously this had been a little vague about what our role was. So the language that's added clarifies that we actually do approve private schools.
Thank you.
I'm looking at KLK, the relations with local government authorities. Mm-hmm. I can see, under this the strikeouts here that this reference the Joint Education Committee.
Yes.
So I guess I'm not quite getting the meaning of this. Like what is it trying to say?
Just that we will work collaboratively with other local government authorities. It's just sort of it's in the MASC reference manual, and so we had our own version, and we had this specific reference to the Joint Education Committee. It really just says that it's just sort of doesn't hold us to anything. It's just sort of a statement that we'll work with our local government entities. I don't have much more to say on that. Yeah, we don't have to have it, but it's already in our manual.
If it's there and MASC has it, then that's fine. I just wasn't quite getting the point of it.
Yeah, I think it, just says basically we are a part of it. It just acknowledges that the school committee is part of a larger governmental structure, mm-hmm. and that we should work collaboratively with other government entities.
Okay, that's fine. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I fell behind, Ms. Walker. Can you reference KHA again? What did you say about that?
Yeah. So KHA was more procedural. A lot of the language that we proposed removing is more procedural and less about policy.
Okay.
And I think, we can make some recommendations on what should be in those procedures, but overall procedures, So I think, Mr. Callahan, when we make our suggestions to the full committee, report out back to the full committee, we've already talked a lot about communication at that fundraising advisory committee, and this would be an area where you could, in the procedures that the district has, they could clarify communication processes.
Thanks.
Anyone else?
Anything else?
Well, that leads us nicely into the fundraising advisory committee. Have you decided when you'd like to present?
I'm going to, Julia and I met, Ms. Walker and I met, and I am going to bring policy KCD to the FinCom meeting, not the special one, the next real one. because we have to go over some of the language in that as it pertains to public gifts to schools. And once we sort that
I
out.
saw the email. You sent us, I think it was like 3 different
Yeah, you have a few that you're kind
Yeah.
of, that are on your
policies,
radar.
so,
Yeah.
so you can add those to our
That'll be
agenda.
on the agenda for the.
So,
I guess the real FinCom meeting is the 11th. The special
Yes.
one is this week.
so we're having a special meeting this week?
Just about the bus.
Okay.
Just about the bus contract.
Thank you
One
for
thing.
clarifying.
The 11th is the standard meeting where we will talk about these policies and how they relate to
Is
that report.
Mr. Littlehill, can you come up for a second? Because I just have a question about the meeting schedule related to that.
Yeah, I think we moved it because of April break, so we wouldn't have to wait until May.
Well, April 11th is the week still before April break. So we're
Yeah.
meeting, we have a meeting this Thursday for the bus contract?
Yeah, that's a special meeting just to discuss the bus contract. Our normal
Okay.
meeting is scheduled for the 11th.
Okay.
Because typically it is the Thursday before the second meeting
Right.
in that
Now, I
week.
had that.
Yeah,
When we were talking earlier, I thought that you were talking about the meeting on the 11th. But you're talking about this,
This
what's the
Thursday.
4th?
Yes.
Yes.
The
thank you.
4th, okay.
I know it puts a burden on you folks, but
Okay.
we only have 30 days before, to award the contract, and the
Right.
time is running out on us.
Okay. That's what so the approval that you need from everyone is also the 4th?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That was my question. So the 4th, we're meeting like 9:30, like regular time?
9:30 regular time. We can do it remote. It's only the 3 of us.
I would just make sure that it gets posted. It's not on the city calendar.
Yeah.
Yeah, tomorrow.
No, I didn't, yeah, that's why I'm trying to get up to
Okay.
speed here.
Yeah.
And then, just while we're talking about it, what Mr. Littlehill was telling me, that once we've had our discussion with FinCom, we have to quickly have a meeting of everyone to approve the bus contract. So he'd like that to be done that evening. Mr. Boger and I are not available that evening, but that would you'd still have a quorum.
What are you
The bus-
are you
the
talking
new bus
about the
contract.
entire school committee or just
Yeah.
the FinCom?
Yeah.
Okay.
This
I missed
Thursday?
a request for a meeting. Was there an email?
This is, Mr. Littlehill approached me about this right before the meeting started.
Okay, but you just said 2 of you aren't available. You haven't asked the rest of us if we're available.
I know, that's
She's
why I'm
exploring.
bringing it up.
She's exploring.
Yeah,
If I could interject for a
yeah.
moment.
I thought he was talking about the 11th, so that's why I called him up.
So, yes, the finance secretary meeting on Thursday to look, I'm going to jump into the bus bids now. So we received 2 bids. Subsequent to receiving the bids, something was brought to our attention. So we had to do some more research to make sure that the bids that we received were all in line with what's required by the law and all that. So that's taken some time. We are at the point where I think we're ready to make a recommendation, but I want to bring it to the finance subcommittee first, give them an update of what we've been doing, make sure that they're also in agreement with that. And then once the finance subcommittee has done that, then I need a special meeting of the school committee to approve the awarding of the contract. It doesn't have to be Thursday. I mean, it could be sometime next week. And I know, again, I'm going to burden you folks, just whatever time you can get together for, it's really a 5-minute phone call if we could do it via online. I think
Zoom.
that's acceptable as well. Just that because of the size of the contract and length of the contract, it does need to be approved by the school committee.
Okay, so it doesn't have to be on the 4th,
No.
but what's your deadline?
My preferred deadline is by next Friday, the Friday before school vacation. If we can get you folks to get that done.
Okay, oh, so we could do it on the 11th then?
You should could.
Okay, all right,
I just can't wait until your next meeting 3 weeks from now, because then I've run out of time.
makes sense.
Can I just ask one question?
Yeah.
So at the special meeting, at the special FinCom meeting
Yes.
this week, are we voting on anything, or are you just presenting the same data you're going to
I'm
present to the?
presenting an update of what we talked about previously, and I'll give my recommendation, then I'll be looking for the finance subcommittee to approve it.
Okay, so unlike city council, we don't have to approve things in committee to go out to the full committee. So I am totally fine with having the special full school committee meeting about the bus contract on the 11th. and not having two things to have the same conversation. I'm fine with that if the other FinCom people are, and then we'll all
Yeah,
vote on
that's
it
what
at
I
once.
thought he was
Just make it to
proposing
vote.
anyway.
Yeah.
Make it, yeah. Okay. So
That's fine.
no special meeting on Thursday for FinCom. The 11th, you guys figure out whatever the special full school committee meeting is to approve that contract or not.
Why are we talking about the 11th? Where did the 11th come from?
Well,
'Cause
11th
that's
is
their
our
regular
regular FinCom
FinCom
meeting.
But that's
Yeah.
not a night thing, that's.
No, that's a
on
day
our
thing.
calendar.
No,
Yeah, yeah,
but we can have it
No.
whenever. Yeah.
So,
Okay.
so I'm getting confused.
I think we can probably sort that out off.
That's
here.
fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay, we'll do
I'm prepared
that.
to be anytime, any place, anywhere at your convenience.
All right,
Thanks, Phil.
thank
Hey,
you.
Phil.
I don't even know if I did my report correctly after all that. Fundraising
Well,
advisory
I
committee.
was asking
Why don't you
about-
start, why don't you go back to the beginning?
Okay. Fundraising advisory. I'm going to bring those policies to FinCom on the 11th.
On the 11th, right.
We will talk about them, and then hopefully Ms. Walker and I will sort out when we're going to report out, and it'll be at our next meeting probably.
Our goal was to have something to report out on at the next regular school committee meeting,
Which is the 23rd.
which is the 23rd.
So for the 20th, I'll
Yes.
pencil you in for the 23rd then. Okay, that's good.
Tuesday instead of Monday, right?
And any CISL updates?
No, we have not met since.
Okay. And Mr. Boger, communications.
Well, the communications subcommittee meeting was really a discussion about the potential of a communications subcommittee that Ms. Walker and Ms. Hall attended, and ultimately we decided it was a promising prospect. I know Ms. Walker's given this a lot of thought and initiative in this direction, and it's relevant. It came up tonight. We do think there's potential to have a group that talks about ways to enhance communication within the district, within different constituencies, both with the district, with the superintendent and his staff, but also with the city council and with parents. I guess the taxpayers would be a sub constituency there as well, and leveraging technology and talking about auditing and polling. So we're planning on meeting again, I think it was the 25th of April. And so that's moving in the direction of being a more official standing subcommittee. And we're thinking about inviting Ms. Furlong at some point to get her expertise and insight on that prospect. That's where we're at.
And just to be clear, we are officially a standing committee because we did vote on that. So now we're just trying to
Now
figure
you're
out-
just acting like
No
one.
longer a prospective committee. It's officially
We're moving in the right direction.
an acting committee. But by the virtue of meeting.
Exactly, we actually are
more
formalizing
official.
a meeting
Yes.
of it.
So I can be in touch with the two of you, but Ms. Furlong is not available that night, so I'll be in touch with
Okay.
other possible dates. Or we can also just shift our focus and invite her to a subsequent meeting, so I'll be in touch about that.
Okay, great.
Anything else for communications? Okay, superintendent's report.
All right. Be quick, just in your packet, we got, let's see, Healthy Kids, Healthy Program Summit. So our wellness team, Ms. Voziolis, and a couple of our staff members will be going to that conference. So I thought that was just a nice thing for that wellness committee and our food service, all the work that they've been doing. That's all I have for that. A little communications. Also, I think I have on here school choice. So right now, our school choice, since we've advertised, we have a lot of interest. So I think that's a good thing. It speaks well of the Newburyport Public Schools. So we have 35 applicants interested in school choice. So I think that's a good thing. None of them are full. The positions, actually grade 4.
Grade 4, yeah.
Yeah, grade
2
4
over.
is 2 over. Yeah.
And what's the deadline?
I think we have May 10th. I was going to say 16th.
So you wait till the 10th and then you do a lottery for
Correct.
grade 4 or any grades that are over?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other two grades that we'll continue to watch are those kindergarten, because we always will take a look at that for the families, and also that grade 1 we'll continue to see. But if there's any changes to those grades, we'll let school committee know.
Superintendent, can I ask you a question about that?
Surely.
Because I've had people ask, and you're so eloquent. Can you give the explanation about why it's not a risk to open choice, even in lower schools? Because there are some people that think, oh, you're going to have to hire new teachers, and then they have a pension and all that stuff. Could you just state that for the record, why that's not the case?
Right. So it's... I think
It's okay. It's a broken record.
Take your time.
So right now, as we move into next year's budget, we have our staffing patterns, we have our classes, we have our resources. So when we look at is open seats, so it's not bringing 100 kids in for one grade. So like, for example, grade 4 is, at this point, we opened up 3 seats. So those class sizes are still manageable. They're low class sizes. So we already have our funding, our budget. This is in addition to. So when we open up school choice, it's not putting any burden or any more expenses on the district.
And what if 20 families with kids in 3rd grade move into the district?
If 20 families and kids, well,
that's the question. I'm repeating things I've been asked.
Well,
I know it's implausible for that to happen. But.
Right. Well, I think that's part of our projections and how we anticipate that. So when we're looking at school choice, just for the viewers, we're not maximizing every single class at every single level.
Right. You're not at the top of the capacity for the grade.
Exactly.
Okay.
No. So for example, if we had 21 students in one class and you had 18 students in another class, you may open up 2 slots for that 18 to be at 20, for example. So you're not, it's not we're maximizing choice. And so when you look at 81, that's the 81 students is current students in the entire system. So it's not like we're bringing in 81 new students every year.
Right.
Yeah.
How do we advertise? Because I heard an ad on the river for Amesbury's choice program.
Now we put
Just
it
in
right
the
there,
Daily News, right?
Daily newspaper, and it's advertised.
I was just surprised it was on the radio.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we just do the newspaper.
Yeah.
We just do the news. I mean, and we get
And then there's a lot of word of mouth too.
Yeah, we get a good response since I've been here. People want to come to Newburyport Public Schools. So.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you. Transportation bid, as Mr. Lilhale said, we have 2 bids, so we're in good spot there. So that's all positive. And our special ed, we got the draft and report. We'll get the final report, but right now, just pleased to report there's 45 criteria that this team looked at. They had no findings. A very positive draft that we have. The 2 areas are kind of minor areas. In one class at the high school, there was, for the focus groupings, so there was at the academic lab, which is like extra support, that can be easily remedied by just changing student schedule. And then very similar issue at the Bresnahan with the one student was age span issue within a program that can be rectified by a schedule change. So overall, it's going to be a very positive report. And then once we have the final report, we'll make that as part of the packet and we can have more discussion. And then under the civil rights areas, there was no findings in civil rights either. So it's going to be I want to report that out because I know Ms. O'Connor and her team have been working extremely hard. So, and it's a comprehensive tiered focusing. We had a team here for 3 days. They select random students. They go into random programs. They looked at all the IEPs. They look at the folders. They look at documentation. So it's a very comprehensive report and process. So I'm getting a little tired, I think. But anyway, so there's that. And I think that's all I have for my superintendent's update. I have one for new business, but I'll wait for that. That's really nothing too much. Thank you.
Yeah, so I think the audit you were talking about is great, and we'll have that in our packet in the future. I think it'd be
Correct.
great to include that in, if we can, if it's appropriate, to put that in our newsletter, just a link to that, because I think we've had a number of requests for a special ed audit, and as we had said, we do that already, so.
Great. What else? All right, new business. I'll just say I will work with Mr. Callahan to sort out when that special meeting is happening for us to approve the bus contract, and we will be in touch. Because it sounds like it doesn't need to be this Thursday. So we can talk offline, and you can look forward to an email about that in the near future.
All right, mine's very quick. We had a request for a company, production company, Saltwater Collective out of Portsmouth. They're working on a back-to-school online commercial and an advertisement, and they reached out to us, and Mr. Burkholm took them around the Bresnahan school. Then they got back to us again, and they're interested in utilizing the Bresnahan school. Obviously, we'll follow all the rental agreements and all of that. They'll have their own actors. And so when we schedule this, it will be obviously during non-school hours and all of that. But I think it's pretty neat. We might see the Bresnahan in a little back-to-school commercial. And maybe I'll hang around. Maybe I could get another job. It's my shot.
We get some revenue from that?
Yes, we are going to be getting some revenue, so that's one of the positives.
Is this a back-to-school commercial for?
They're actually it's a
what?
for a it's a the company. It's a back-to-school line, so they're advertising.
clothing, or?
Nope, they're advertising a water bottle, Nalgene water bottle
Okay.
for kids.
Why Bresnahan?
I don't know.
I mean,
They
it's
saw
got a
it.
little bit of the nautical theme, you know,
Yeah.
it's a pretty school.
Yeah, that is a throw.
It is a pretty school.
Yeah.
So I'll give you more details on
Good.
that, but I think that's a positive.
Yeah, that's exciting. Any other new business?
I mean, I'll just make a couple comments. The Whittier Task Force next meeting is Wednesday over in Amesbury, so we're looking forward to that, see how that conversation goes. And just to talk a little bit about what the city's budget process is as we're going through this process here. We started our budget conversations last week. We have meetings this week, so my team will meet with each department head individually, and we'll go through their budget line by line. We also, if you've seen our budget books before, we have narratives for each, like we do for the schools, but for each department that we talk about successes this past year, goals and trends and things like that. So we go through all those things, and all those meetings will be done by the end of next week, I believe. And then, like Member Walker was asking earlier, so then once we get an idea about where numbers are for the schools, we kind of put that in the mix, and then we'll see where we're at. But yeah, so far it's been good. I think a lot of departments are kind of following the school's lead, knowing that, with revenues down on the state level, this is a year that we have to be really conscious about, or be really thoughtful about what we're putting forward in our budget. And like I said, I think we're in a better spot than some communities, that we're still going to be able to put a really good budget together that moves us forward in a lot of areas, but particularly schools. That's it.
Anyone else? All right, can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.